Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to VUX World. Today we have an epic show lined up for you. If you are even remotely interested in the voice space, if you're currently involved in the voice space, if you're looking to get into the voice space, this is going to be a fantastic episode for you. We're talking about how you can build Alexa skills without coding. We've got Vasili Shynkarenka lined up for us today from Storyline, and we're going to be talking all about Storyline and getting into the details of the platform and what the platform does and how it works and how you can then create Alexa skills without coding. And we also have Dustin Coates joining us again to co-host. Hello there, Dustin.
Hello, everyone. Excited to speak about Storyline today.
Wicked. And without further ado, let's get to the start of the show. Vasili, hello.
Hey, can you hear me well, guys?
Yes, it's coming through loud and clear.
Fantastic.
Let's start, before we go any further, with a huge apology and thank you to Vasili for joining us today, because, ladies and gentlemen, we have tried to do this before, and my stupid schoolboy error meant that the conversation we had was not recorded. What a pathetic thing to do. So thank you, Vasili, for joining us again and to speak all about Storyline. It's much appreciated. Thank you very much.
No worries, guys. Thanks for having me today.
Wicked. So, Vasili, let's get started. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and what you do at Storyline and where your concept for Storyline came about?
Yeah, sure. So my background is computer science, and I've been working in this field for about 3 years already. So we started from building products around chatbots and voice interfaces 3 years ago. And then we founded a company. It was an agency that was like conversational experiences from brands and businesses in Europe. And we grew that company from 2 to 10 people. And then we sold that company to focus completely on Storyline. And that's like how we got the idea of Storyline. When we were creating skills for brands, we figured out that the skill creation is actually a two-step process. So there is the first step when you have to create the conversation, you have to set the wording, the pauses, and the persona of the bot. And the second part where you actually need to code the app. And we've always been like kind of like iterating between these two steps back and forth. And we thought that it would be really nice if you could create this kind of like whole working app yourself without any development included. So that's like where the idea of Storyline came up.
Cool. And when was that time-wise?
So actually, like, we had an idea for Storyline for about 2 years, but it was kind of early because, as you remember, guys, 2 years ago, the number of Echo devices in the market was extremely low. It was like low millions, right? And now we have 40 million smart speakers sold around the world. So that's pretty cool. And so we had an idea for Storyline for 2 years, but we actually started working on Storyline this summer. And we launched the first version of the product in the middle of October.
Fantastic. And for those people who haven't come across Storyline, could you tell us a little bit about what Storyline is?
Yeah, sure. So Storyline makes it like extremely easy for anyone to create skills for Amazon Alexa without any development included. So you can actually build like your first skill in a couple of minutes by following our simple tutorial and in a simple visual interface. So there is no need to code anything, to deploy anything, to set up servers. Storyline handles that for you. You only need to create the conversation in the visual UI and connect different parts of the conversation together.
Cool. So what kind of interested you about the kind of voice? Because last time we spoke, I mean, and you can tell straight away from starting the conversation, you're immensely passionate about the whole voice thing. Where did your kind of interest in voice come from, and where did all that stem from?
Yeah, I'm sure like you guys remember like the Star Trek, and where they had like this HAL machine that you could talk to, and that was really like interesting for me in the early days. And I found that this is the future that we will have eventually, or in the next 5, 7, 10 years. And I'm really excited to be a part of that future. And I'm really excited to kind of like create that future among all other companies who are working in this field.
Yeah, fantastic. Was it a conscious effort to purposefully try and create something that you don't need to have kind of sophisticated technical skills for? Was it a conscious effort to try and create something that was accessible for people who might not be as technically savvy?
Yeah, so this is really interesting because, as you remember, like from web and mobile, you have to have some technical knowledge to create something, and then the companies like Weebly came out that kind of like simplify the whole creation of website process. And with voice, it's a little bit different. And the way it's different is that you don't have to be like a 5,000 person company to create the experience that could be really popular in voice. So like following up on that, actually today, Amazon announced the final, the grand prize for their Alexa Skills Challenge for Kids. And I'm really excited to share that the skill that was built in Storyline, Kids Squared, won the grand prize. And this skill was designed and created by a woman who doesn't know how to code. And she built the skill entirely in Storyline. And she has one-person team, right?
Wow. And
there were like number of agencies with hundreds of people competing for this prize, and she won because she had this original idea, and using Storyline, she was able to implement this idea she was able to bring it to life. So that's really cool, and that's like where it's coming. So we think that in the future, the primary use case for voice apps will be content, and all like apps will be content-driven apps, and like that's where we are going. And Storyline actually powers people to create these kind of applications without any technical knowledge required.
Fantastic. You must be over the moon about that. So first of all, how do you feel about the fact that this prize-winning app was created in Storyline? And secondly, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the skill?
Yeah, sure. So the skill so I'm really excited about that. That's a massive proof of concept that using Storyline, you could create like any kind of even sophisticated experience, right? Not just like simple Hello World app. So that's really cool. And the skill is called Kids Squared. A game where first you have to choose a number of players playing. So for example, 2, and then their Alexa serves as a judge in the court, and it's kind of like helps kids to solve their quarrels, to figure out who was right and who was wrong. So, and the experience, like, this is completely voice first experience, because I could not imagine this kind of like application on the iOS or web work that way. So that's why I think this is like there is something here.
Absolutely, that's unbelievable. I'd be absolutely over the moon if I was you, like having that. That's wicked. So, do you want to kind of talk us through? I know it might be a bit difficult to. Obviously, we don't have the visual, but I mean, could you kind of like talk us through how Storyline works, and if someone was going to kind of start getting up and running, what would be the process to sort of like start using Storyline, and how does it all work and hang together?
Yeah, of course. So it's really easy to get up and running with Storyline. All you need to do is to go to getstoryline.com and sign up using your Google account. And then you have to create your first skill in Storyline, and there is a video tutorial on that too. So you'll see the video tutorial in the app itself. But the way it works is so we designed Storyline for non-tech people from ground up. And the way we design Storyline, the way we think about conversational design is the concept of blocks and steps. And first, when you create the app, you will see this welcome block. And the block in Storyline is kind of like a short conversation between you and Alexa. So the block has a couple of messages from Alexa, and then user replies. What user could reply to that Alexa message? And out of those user replies, you create another blocks. So that's how you design the conversation in Storyline.
So each block represents a chunk of a conversation. Is that
Yeah,
right?
a blog is kind of like a short conversation, a short interaction between you and Alexa. And in a blog, there could be like a number of messages from Alexa. So there is in the welcome block, it could be like the first message could be a text from Alexa that Alexa reads to the user. Then it plays some sound. Then it could execute some API request, drop the data from Google Sheets, and tell the data to the user. And then you will have like some sort of user replies, what user could say to that message.
So you mentioned there about Google Sheets, and we kind of touched on this previously when we spoke before. Could you want to kind of talk us through a little bit about, because I imagine that trying to make it accessible for people who aren't quite as kind of sophisticated and working with databases and all that stuff could be, I mean, Google Sheets is something that kind of everyone would be able to use. So what would the relationship be between Google Sheets and Storyline, and what would some examples be where people might use Google Sheets to enhance the Storyline kind of experience?
Yeah, so Google Sheets, like, it's the holy grail for non-tech people, right? Because they use it for everything. And we thought that it's a good idea to integrate Google Sheets and Storyline. And right now the integration is kind of like in progress, but you can integrate Google Sheets and Storyline using the API request tab in Storyline. And that's kind of very easy. And the way it works is you could select a random cell in some specific column in the Google spreadsheet, for example, to make a random fact tab. So you could make a fact that tells you some history facts every day, and it could grab the facts out of this Google spreadsheet. So the content management becomes really easy with this, right? It's kind of like sort of CMS plugin for WordPress. So that's how we think about that. So we think about this like we think about the whole ecosystem as our like system of plugins that we could plug into Storyline and that you could use to create more advanced voice experiences. And Google Sheets is just an example of that.
And Vasili, you mentioned going out to API requests as well if people want to go a little bit beyond. How does that work in this context?
Yeah, so basically we have a JSON API request tab in Storyline, and to use that, you need to provide a JSON file. You need to provide an API request that sends some JSON file to you, right, using GET request. And basically then you could grab some data from that JSON and save that data as a variable and use that variable in your skill. So that's how it works.
Great. And what do you see as the future for this API integration? Are you going to have further integrations down the line with maybe even services like Zapier or something like that?
Right. Yeah, that's where it's going. So we're going to integrate if this then that and Zapier to kind of like extend their possible use cases for this, right? Because Zapier has a lot of integrations itself, and by building a Zapier integration, we are kind of like opening a whole new world of integrations possible for Storyline.
That sounds like a good idea. That's the whole kind of like WordPress for voice approach is quite sort of.
Think about it this way, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good sort of idea that like. So is there any, once you've kind of got up and running with Storyline, you've got there and you've kind of lined up your blocks and steps, and you might have used either a Google Sheets integration, or you may well have used your own kind of integrations with the APIs and whatnot, and you've kind of got something that is, it's up and running and it's kind of working. What would the steps be to kind of like, how would you go about testing what you have before you publish, or is the scope for kind of testing something before you publish it?
Yeah, so this is actually the most used feature in Storyline. So we allow you to test your app right in the browser. You actually don't have to have an Amazon account to do that. So you can even create a voice app without having an Amazon account, and you can build this app in Storyline, and you can test that in the browser. And then only if you need to upload it to Alexa or to publish it to the Alexa skill store, you could connect your Amazon account and do that. But the best thing about that is that continually test and fix and iterate on your app right in the browser. So that's very cool. That's like when you add some content and you just want to test how it feels and how it looks, you just click the play button in Storyline, and you can also customize the starting point where to start playing. So that's pretty cool if you have a huge skill built in Storyline, right? And that's it. You can interact with your skill right in the browser.
Oh, fantastic. And I think we might have touched on this before as well. When you have quite a large kind of skill that has a lot going on, and there is various, it's almost like a process map, isn't it? So you kind of draw out the various paths that people can go down and within the kind of experience. Correct me if I'm wrong, there's a way that you can actually start testing from a certain point within the skill itself, isn't it? Rather than having to start from the beginning and work your way down the various channels.
Yeah, correct. So you can start from any point in your skill. So that's the best part compared to other prototyping tools that help you to just like publish your skill on Alexa, right? Launch it on Alexa and just go through the testing like from the very beginning, and that takes like a lot of time. If you have a huge skill and you want to just test a small part of it to just understand how it sounds, it could take like 10 minutes to get to that part. So by customizing the starting point of your test, we really simplify the testing process.
Wicked. You mentioned there, you kind of said other prototyping tools. This platform has been used obviously to create some pretty successful skills, or at least skills that are certainly on a trajectory to make them pretty successful. Do you see Storyline as a prototyping tool, or do you see it as more of a more well-rounded platform?
Yeah, so that's a good point. And we actually started working on Storyline. Storyline, in the beginning, it was like a prototyping tool. The first version of Storyline was a prototyping tool that allowed you to create the prototype of your voice app in the browser. And then you could just like go and recreate this app for Alexa, right, using Alexa Skills Kit. But the day we launched Storyline, Amazon opened an ability to programmatically publish your skills on Alexa. And we thought this like kind of like a sign from the universe. So we added that, and it worked really well. It worked extremely well. I think like in terms of prototyping tools, there are a number of companies in this field, but instead of publishing the skill directly, these tools are meant to be just like the first step in the voice app creation process. Like it's where designers can flesh out how a skill should work before handing off to coding to development team, right? But this is like, there is a huge difference between these companies, between us and between prototyping tools, because prototyping tools are great to play with and explain ideas, but it's super hard to like retain your users by being a prototyping tool, because your users use the tool just to prototype, and then that's it, like the end, right? So when they build their voice app, they're not going to iterate back and forth between the prototype and between the live voice app. So that's the problem. And with Storyline, our users, they're staying like throughout the process of launching and iterating upon their voice app. And the best thing is that we could use their data from how their users are using the skill when the skill is published to improve the design. So it's kind of like a little loop here, right? I think that's a way better approach than just to cover a small prototyping step in this process.
Absolutely. And what kind of analytics are available? You touched on the fact that you can kind of measure and monitor and iterate things once you've got them up and running. What sort of analytical insights or kind of things come with Storyline? Yeah,
so right now I provide just like a very simple basic analytics. So we have a graph which shows you your daily active users in your skill, and 3 stats. It's number of users, number of sessions, and number of interactions for a skill. But we're going to improve that pretty soon, and soon you will see like a skill usage flow that will tell you how many users are dropping off on each step of your skill. So that would be like much more interesting.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be crucial, that, doesn't it? It's almost like a little bit sort of like Google Analytics sort of thing, where you can track your user journeys and work out where people are having trouble throughout the experience. Because from what I've heard, and I don't know if you know any more, Dustin, and yourself, Vasili, in terms of the analytical insights that you get from Amazon itself, doesn't seem to be wildly terrific, is it?
Yeah, so Storyline, with Storyline, we already processed around 2 million user requests. And we have some interesting data there. So, and we're going to use that data to improve skills that you build in Storyline.
Absolutely. What would you class as a user request then? Is that like is that an invocation of a skill, or is that a series of interactions throughout one experience?
It's a series of interactions between you and a skill.
Okay.
And so, Vasili, looking at the analytics, how should a creator of a skill on Storyline, or really any skill creator, how should they think of a successful skill invocation? What are your thoughts on there?
You mean invocation name itself?
No, just in the web and the mobile space, we have conversions. How should skill developers think of conversions in the skill context, in your opinion, looking at all this data that you've got coming in? How do they know if this skill is being successful?
So it's really hard to guess that right now, because there is this black box of whether Alexa is promoting your skill or not. And if you get there, that's it, you're successful from the day one. But if not, you're struggling to get tens of users every day. And we think that this is a little bit unfair. And we see that Amazon's actually promoting some specific categories of skills using their internal Alexa promotion thing. And we're actually trying to tackle this problem too, but from another perspective. We recently launched the beta for our new feature called phone numbers. And the phone numbers feature allows you to ask your users in your skill for a phone number, and then send them notifications about your skill, README instructions, sharing SMS that allows them to share the skill with others, and updates about the skill itself. So with that, we are kind of trying to solve this problem, but from another perspective. We are trying to retain users, and we are trying to grow their skills to help them acquire more users. Using this for SMS feature. But it's really hard. I think it's the biggest problem is getting users right now on Alexa.
Well, this new feature that you're talking about sounds like a real boon for developers in terms of increasing their skill usage. Will this be available to developers outside of the Storyline ecosystem, or do you really want them to buy into the entire ecosystem to take advantage of this?
Yeah, correct. So the tool is available only for skills built on Storyline, because that's it's very easy to implement that in Storyline skills. And for you as a skill maker, it would be really easy to customize different SMS messages that you are sending, different kind of hooks for your users in Storyline. And it would be really hard to do that if you are using this externally. So that's why it's only for Storyline.
And speaking of another tool that you rolled out recently, it's the audio conversion tool. I know that's one that's going to be very interesting to skill builders. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So probably the biggest problem on building skills with sounds right now is how to convert their MP3 file into the right format for Alexa, because Alexa's bitrate is a little bit different. And if you just try to insert your MP3 file, it wouldn't work. So that's why we built a tool that helps our users and actually any external developer that is building Alexa skills to convert MP3 files into the right format for Alexa. And right now it works right in the browser. You can go to getstoryline.com/audioconverter to launch the tool. But we are going to integrate that in Storyline. And when you click attach MP3 file to your skill in Storyline, you will be able to, the tool will automatically launch, and it will convert the file on the fly. So you don't have to go to the tool.
Oh, fantastic.
That's a great idea. So what file format do they want? Is it a specific Alexa file format, or is it a generic one that Alexa's just flashing in front of me? She always does this. I'm going to mute her. Shut up. Right. Sorry about that. Is it a specific Alexa-specific file format, or is it a more generic audio format?
Yeah, so Alexa has a little bit different audio file format. So the MP3 files that you upload to Alexa, they have to be converted with the appropriate bitrate and another metric. Yeah.
And what about, because obviously Amazon are starting to push other kinds of devices that aren't just purely audio only, like the Dot and the Echo Show. Is there anything in the pipeline on what are your thoughts on those devices, and is there anything in the pipeline for Storyline by way of adding visuals or videos or any kind of other multimodal kind of things in there?
Yeah, sure. So we'll support Echo Show for sure. So you'll be able to build cards for Echo Show and include visuals in those cards, like images or texts and different kind of like URLs as you want. This is probably coming later this year, I think, like closer to the summer, because right now it's still the number of Echo Show devices and the number of Echo Spot devices is very low in comparison to Echo Dots, for example, right, or just Echo. So that's why we are focused on building their most requested features by our developers, like our audio player, for example. So we're actually releasing our audio player feature this week. An audio player feature enables you to insert any kind of long audio file or even audio stream from your radio station and make this live on Alexa.
That means we'll be able to live broadcast this podcast.
Yes, correct. So you'll be able to launch your podcast scale and even broadcast it live.
Wow, that is something that will be absolutely getting checked out very soon. That sounds wicked. So do you want to, I think if we move to talk, in fact, no, actually, before we do that, let's just kind of back up slightly and finish off this little piece, which was, we kind of spoke about getting started with Storyline. We spoke about getting up and running and things like that. We spoke about testing, and we spoke a little bit about analytics, but what we didn't do is get into how you would go about taking something that you've created in Storyline and then getting it from within Storyline into the skill store. So how does that process work?
So that works really easy, and I've been talking to a number of people from the industry, from enterprise companies, and they all were really surprised how easy it is to actually take the skill that you build in Storyline and launch it on Alexa. So all you need to do is just click Upload to Alexa button in Storyline and connect your Amazon account. And if you don't have an Amazon developer account, Storyline will ask you to create one, and it takes a couple of minutes to do that. So that's pretty easy to do. And then Storyline automatically takes the skill that you build in Storyline and uploads it to your Echo device. And this process takes about a minute and a half from the very first time. And the best thing is that if you want to update the content in your skill, you could do that without uploading it to Alexa every time. So you only need to upload it to Alexa, to update their interaction model when you update, edit, or delete user replies in your skill. So if you don't do that, if you only change or audio steps or anything else or any content in your skill, you don't have to upload to Alexa. It's updated in live, instantly.
Wow, that's pretty good. So you would only need to submit it for, is it a recertification you would have to go through, or is it just a
recertification step? By saying upload to Alexa, I mean upload to your local Echo device, which is connected to your Amazon account. So, but if you want to publish it to their Amazon skill store, you have to click Publish button in Storyline. There is a big blue button which helps you to go through the publishing process. And we're going to eventually have this publishing process right in Storyline, so you don't have to even go to developer portal to do that. But right now, the publishing button, it kind of takes your skill and leads you to their publishing step in the Amazon developer portal where you need to specify your skill description, enter a skill, or enter like different kind of like phrases that could invoke your skill, like Alexa start or daily life hack or something like that, and choose skill icons.
Cool. And then, I think one of the fairly unique things about Storyline is from some of the other people and platforms we've seen and spoke to and looked at over the last few weeks since launching the podcast. So quite a lot of them are open source. Which means that it's quite difficult for the companies to actually understand quite how much things are being used. So it's difficult to get an idea of the volume and the usage on various open source platforms if you're downloading stuff from GitHub or what have you. With Storyline, obviously, you have a kind of cloud-based platform, and presumably you can find out how many people are kind of developing on there and things like that. We don't have to necessarily go into the details of numbers if you don't want to share that kind of stuff, but I kind of wanted to get into the realms of talking about the community of, I want to say developers, but it's not, is it? It's not necessarily developers, because it's seemingly a really user-friendly way of being able to do things without actually being able to or needing to code. So what kind of usage are you getting, and what tell us a little bit more about that kind of community that you have there?
Yeah, so actually, we grew over 300% in the last months, and right now it's we need to add more servers because Storyline started getting real traction. But in terms of the community, we actually think that the community is the core of every business. And if you take a look on companies such as Airbnb and others, they have people who use their. It's a core, it's an essence of their business, and we think about we think that every developer tool should have that, and I don't know why so few developer tools build their communities for developers, but we started growing the community the day one we launched Storyline, and right now it has slightly over 800 people from all over the world who create Alexa skills in Storyline, and the engagement in this community is amazing. So on daily basis, we have over 10 posts from all people, from all Storyline users, who kind of share their ideas for skills, ask each other for help, and basically are creating this whole hype train about Storyline. So that's extremely cool for us. And we actually invest a lot of resources in building the community, and I post daily. Every day post a new piece of content regarding Alexa skills, regarding building engaging Alexa skills, how to get users, how to get traction. We post feature updates in the community. We invite our community members to some specific Storyline events. So we have even small competitions for Alexa skills of the month built on Storyline in our community. So the community thing it helps to humanize the business in some way, because usually most companies, most people think about companies as about enterprises and entities, like legal entities, right? But it's not. Every company is about people, and it's about people who run the company. It's about the team, and our goal as a company is to actually be more open and more present among our users. So that's why we reply to every post and to every comment in our community, and we have intercom on our website, and we treat every user the same, whether it's a guy from a huge enterprise, or it's a usual user from Japan who asked us to add Japanese language, and we did that over the weekend. And he was so excited that he shared the story across Japanese magazines, and we got a number of publications about that. But this approach, it actually helps you to build more human-oriented and user-oriented business, and it works really well.
Wicked. From what I've seen over the past few weeks, you're incredibly active on Facebook in the community there, and posting on YouTube regularly, and there's an email that goes out quite often. You must never get any sleep.
I'm actually like much more productivity focused than you think. So yeah.
Wicked. So what you mentioned that the kind of someone got in touch with you and asked for kind of Japanese support, which you did. Have you got any other examples of where people in the community might have kind of approached you regarding a feature request or anything that they might have found useful on the platform that you've also took into consideration?
Yeah, so we actually like this for the next 2 weeks. We started working on the most requested feature by our community. It's variables. It's an ability to use our built-in slots that are provided by Amazon, and it's an ability to create your own variables in Storyline and use them through the skill. So we started working on that in these 2 weeks, and this feature was requested so many times that there is a number of posts about this feature, and where people were like, sharing what they would give to a Storyline team if we build that feature. And there is a guy from Hawaii who sent us like a huge bag of pineapples if we build variables in Storyline. So that's extremely cool, right?
Yeah. So you're going to be dining on pineapples and having pineapples for breakfast for the next few weeks.
Yeah. And actually, it's pretty funny because our other guys, like there is a dude from the UK who joined him, and who said like he would send us like a couple of bags of our English tea if we would build that feature. So that's like that's how you figure out what things to focus on.
Absolutely. That sounds as though you've got a very vibrant community there, especially if they're already willing to give stuff to see stuff happen. I mean, you should be putting feature requests through Kickstarter or something like that.
Yeah, so actually, we don't have those times when you're kind of like sitting and thinking what to build next, because we have so huge roadmap right now. That's like exploring what's the best approach to tackle this specific feature. And for variables, so we started from right now we're starting from like building some basic functions like using slots in your scale, so an ability to like save username, location, and all that stuff, and use that through the skill. And then we'll evolve that by like adding an ability to save your own variables, create variables, and use them. So yeah, that's how it works for us.
Good. So you were chatting there about you kind of post some things around kind of tips and tricks and things like that around getting traction and how to get users and things like that. If somebody's kind of approached the Storyline platform and gone through the processes that we've kind of just outlined in terms of creating a skill and testing a skill, getting it published to the skill store and it's out there, what are some of the things that you'd be able to share with the listeners of VUX World in terms of getting traction and acquiring users? Have you got any kind of tips for getting out there and getting some adoption on these things?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is like I think the thing that matters the most right now for getting traction on Alexa is having a good invocation name. And most people they get this horribly wrong because they name their skills like, I don't know, with 5 words, and nobody could understand what that means. So if you're building, like as an example, if you're building a skill with sounds, don't name it like that. Just name it like rain sounds or ocean sounds. And I think that's like as the time goes, it will be really hard to get a good invocation name, right? Because it's the same thing that happened with our domain space during the last like 20 years. And but yeah, still the invocation name is very important. And the second thing I would say is very important is getting 5-star user reviews on the Amazon App Store. Mm-hmm. So that's probably the second most important thing right now. And like a few people know that, but you could actually leave a review for your skill. So from the very beginning, you could have like the first 5-star review, and it works on both our Alexa's algorithm and people's psychology level. So Alexa treats skills that have higher ratings a little bit differently. So she promotes these skills across all Echo device owners. And from psychology level, it's actually very helpful. Like when you're, like just imagine like the regular times when you're buying something on Amazon, and if you see if this thing has like 0 reviews, you're not probably going to buy that, right? So that's the same. Like, and if you could leave like the first 5-star review for your skill, just do that. Why not? Because then people will be like much more interested in checking that out.
And one of the things that a lot of skill developers do is they ask in their skill for reviews. For storyline skill creators, would you recommend them do that as well?
Yeah, I think it's actually like a good way of getting reviews. But I think there should be a balance here, like between begging for reviews, right, and just asking about that politely once in a few weeks, right? So I think that it's actually like very interesting because there is no direct correlation between number of reviews that you have and number of users. So there is a skill which has over like 1,000 user reviews, and all of them are like 5 stars. But there is a skill which has around 80 user reviews, and that skill, the second skill, it has probably like 2x more users right now. So that's very interesting. So there is no like, I think that SEO on Alexa is just like getting up and running right now, and there is no industry standards, and it's really hard to guess like what works and what doesn't. It's just like experiments.
Yeah. What a kind of, so being discovered seems to be a challenge, and that seems to be a fairly common thing that crops up from the various people that we've kind of spoke to. What are some of the other sort of challenges that exist around either the voice space in general or challenges about kind of developing for Alexa?
I think that discovery is probably the biggest challenge for building skills, because I think that even right now, it seems that Alexa has not reached the product market fit. Probably Alexa reached the product market fit, but Alexa skills haven't. So that's the problem, right? We have like 40 million Echo devices sold, and in this 40 million Echo devices sold, we have like only a couple of millions using skills. So their most popular skills, there is no skill which has like more than a million users, and that's like one. It's actually 2%, 2.5% of the total Echo device owners. Audience, and I think that's the problem. This problem, we are trying to solve that, as I mentioned, using phone numbers and using user acquisition tips and different tricks for user acquisition. But I think that it's actually a big problem in terms of user habits. That people don't have habits of using Alexa skills now, do they? And that's the problem. And the way to solve that problem is by creating good skills first, and by promoting, by building skills that solve like real use cases and that solve real problems for people. If you're like an Christian guy and you read your Bible verses every day, you could just like ask Alexa about Bible verses, and if there is a skill about Bible verses, Alexa will respond to that, right? So in this case, there is a direct need for that. And most skills, they're like kind of like funny, but they don't solve a specific problem, and that's their challenge.
Yeah, it seems to be the people returning to use those skills again is kind of a challenge, isn't it? So if you've got something, as you say, that solves a real use case, then you've got more.
It's interesting in a way that so across my friends, all of them have Echo devices. And there is like a split. So folks who don't use skills on their Echo devices, they don't use them at all. Like they use 0 skills. But folks who use skills, they use many skills. Because like once they discover that there are skills on Alexa, and once they got a few experiences, a few really well-designed experiences, they buy into that. Like they continue using that. And I think that, yeah, we should think about that, like how to tackle this problem of like providing a good first-time user experience for skills. And I think that this problem could be probably solved on the Amazon's level, not on the skills builder level, like how to onboard users to start using skills.
Yeah, that was going to be my kind of next question is whose problem is that? Is it an Amazon problem, or is it, because you're kind of doing the right thing from your perspective in terms of giving people tips and tricks and advice in how they can kind of increase their usership. So the question is really, is it your problem? Is it the skill developer's problem, or is it a bigger thing that Amazon potentially could be doing a little bit more to try and help with?
I think it's definitely Amazon's problem in some way, because like it's really hard to discover skills right now, and App Store, like nobody knows about App Store, right? So we have a couple of skills on the App Store on the front page of their Amazon.com /skills, and they're getting like thousands of users, but not even tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. So that's the problem. Like people are not aware that there is an App Store for Alexa, and they don't know how to use that. So we think that, and from the other perspective, it's a problem of skill developers too, because I know that most people, they tried using skills on Alexa, and their experience wasn't great. So that's the problem. And if their first experience wasn't great, then like they would never use skills again, right? Yeah. So I think that Amazon is actually doing the right thing by promoting really good skills, like top skills on Alexa. When you're just setting the device, they are trying like to explain that there are these really good skills on Alexa. You can check them out. And once you buy into that, they start recommending you other skills, which are maybe like not very good, but still you can give them a shot.
Vasili, do you think the first breakout skill, if you will, I've heard it called the Angry Birds of skills, do you think that's going to come from a large brand, say a Domino's or an Uber, or do you think that's going to come from one of these smaller developers, even perhaps someone on Storyline?
That's a very good question. Like, so I have a question for you. Have you ever tried using Uber on Alexa?
Tried using what?
Uber on Alexa. Like,
I've never tried Uber, I have to be honest.
That's the problem, right? And even if you try, you will be like handling your phone by just like to be aware that there is nothing wrong with that. So there is really, it's really hard to use these kind of skills that provide services, because voice is still very new interface for that. I think that in the couple of years we will be like fully aware of that, and so we'll just like Alexa, call Uber to the airport, and that's it, right? But right now it's like I don't see that people use these skills. There is no reason to use that. Like, why would I use an Uber on Alexa if I have it on my phone? Probably just like to get a quick ride or to schedule a ride, but like this motivation to use Uber on Alexa is very low. So I think you cannot just like take the mobile experience and copy that on Alexa. The experience should be like redesigned from the ground up. And that's why I think that skills, and today we got a first solid proof of that skills like KidScore that are designed not by huge companies, but by real people, they could be like potential winners in this space.
The So those examples that you mentioned there about Uber, and Dustin, you mentioned Domino's, those kind of skills or interactions with voice sort of devices seem to be very much further down that kind of sales funnel, if you like. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's say, for example, if there was a skill that allowed you to reorder toilet paper or something like that, it's kind of, you're already at the point of wanting to buy something. You're already at the point of wanting to buy a pizza or wanting to book an Uber, or it's kind of at the very end of that sales funnel, isn't it? And Vasili, you mentioned earlier on that you would kind of recommend to focus at this moment in time on content, which is at the other end of the funnel, which is kind of the awareness raising and trust building kind of area. Is that where you would think that, along Dustin's line of questioning, is that where you would imagine the first kind of breakout skill will be? It will be something more content based or more engaging, as opposed to something that is transactional?
Yeah, I think that's actually like right now, and in the next couple of years, Alexa would be like more a content consumption device than an iPhone, right? So you buy stuff from Amazon using your iPhone, but you probably are not going to buy like $100 sneakers from Amazon using your voice, because you need to check them out, right?
Yeah.
You need to browse through images, you need to like just read user reviews, and it's extremely hard to do that using your voice. So that's the problem. And I think that's like for some goods that are really low priced, that's like a couple of bucks, and that you order like every day or every week, like a paper towels, for example, this is a very good use case. So I would love to reorder my paper towels like every week. So that's a very good use case, because I don't really care about this couple of bucks, right? But if you like, there are skills from jewelry companies on Alexa, and I don't really know. Like they think that you will buy like $1,000 jewelry using your voice. Like, no way.
Yeah, it's very hard to design an experience for that, isn't it? Buy this jewelry, it's very shiny and nice.
Yeah, but I think that the problem is not like in the user experience of the skill, but the problem is that this thing is freaking expensive, and I need to like read user reviews. I need to just like understand whether I need it or not. I could probably like ask my friends about that, and there is no way to do that using your voice. So as a developer, you should think about that, and you should understand the limitations of the space. And from our point of view, from our experience, Alexa is much more like a content consumption device, not an iPhone, right? And people who understand that, they build successful skills because they know like the use case for Alexa. So not everybody knows that the most popular use case for Alexa is getting information and playing music. That's why sound skills are so popular. So there are, out of top 10 skills, like 5 of them are sounds. And you should think about that like based on these like use cases, right? And just take the use case and try to implement that and iterate on that. But I think there is no way we can see like are buying jewelry through Alexa in the next couple of years. For that, like using the device like Echo Show, that's one step toward this direction, because you have a screen and you have like user reviews and you can browse through them. So that's where Alexa initiates the starting point, right? And then you go through the funnel, through the buying funnel, using the display, but just using your voice, I don't think it's possible right now.
You mentioned there a few things. One really great insight was focusing on some kind of experience that involves sound, and another is to focus on kind of like content. So what other advice would you give either skill builders or people who are new to the scene and just getting started and looking to kind of build the first skill? What other advice would you give to those people?
First, I think you could just like, you always should start by doing a little research right? And the right thing to do here would be to go to their Amazon App Store and browse top skills and read through user reviews for these top skills. That's how you understand like users' need, what's their belief, why they're using these skills. And I actually did that. So a couple of months ago, I was browsing like through top 5,000 user reviews for top Alexa skills, and I wrote an article about that. So it's on Storyline blog. You guys can check it out. I think we will attach the link to the podcast. But their major insights are that like these kind of like experiences, they all based around two things: time and location. And the first thing is time, that most people use Alexa 3 times per day. The first one is morning. So when you wake up, a lot of people use Alexa just like to fire up your brain in the morning, just read through news, listen to their flash briefing, or playing some trivia game, fire up their brains while they're like cooking their breakfast or drinking coffee. Then the second use case is, the first use case is attached to the location, to the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And the second use case is dinner time. So, and this use case is also related to multiple participants involved. And that's very interesting. One insight I got recently is that 51% of skills users use skills with someone else. So 51% of people who use skills, they use them with their family or friends. And that's really interesting from the developer's perspective, because if you know that, you would think about like, how can I create this multiplayer experiences in my skills, right? Mm. So if you're building a trivia game, you could probably include 2 or 3 players to just leverage on that. So during the dinner time, people are mostly like trying to relax with their family, and they play some games on Alexa. And there are a couple of really good games, and they are like going and launching Jeopardy skill and going through clues in Jeopardy. And the third use case is related to bedroom location, and the time for that is at bedtime. So when you're going to sleep, you're listening to stories, you're listening to like ocean sounds and different kind of like sounds like that. And you know that like all these use cases, they are content-oriented use cases. On each use case, you get some content, right? So that's why I think that, and that's how real people use Alexa. That's like not what you think about using Alexa. That's how real people use it.
That's fantastic. That's really interesting, actually. It does seem, because it's ironic that Amazon is a purely kind of, or largely e-commerce business, whereas, and I know that I'm sure there'll be plans up the sleeve to try and put kind of transactional things into the Echo devices over time, but it's interesting that a company that doesn't really have a huge, I suppose the content creation from Amazon Prime and stuff like that is an example of that, but it's just interesting how a purely more or less e-commerce company has got a device that is largely content based. I wonder if that's an example of users getting from it what they want from it. I remember reading something about when Facebook was created, and what they created in the first instance was what they thought would work, and then when people got hold of it and they started tagging people in photographs and stuff like that, it morphed into something that the users turned it into as opposed to what the company turned it into. I wonder if there's something like that going on, or whether it was kind of this was the plan.
Yeah, it's I think it's really hard for us right now to like kind of like predict or just like figure out what was the Amazon's plan for the Echo device. I don't think that's you could guess that right now. So we'll see like in the couple of years what was the real plan, because what we have right now, it was already planned like 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So what we're going to have in 3 years, that is like something that we're working on right now. So you should think about, I think that's, you should always think about the future, not about the past and the present. You should always keep in mind like the use cases, and just like try to think like 5 years from now, I'm in this room, what will it look like? what devices will we have in the room, what kind of like experiences we'll be having in this room, right? And that's, I think, the right way of thinking about things.
Fantastic. Before we wrap up then, Dustin, have you got any more other questions for Vasili?
Yeah, I think just one. So I read that you're going through Y Combinator. Congratulations. What are you hoping to get out of that?
So YC has been awesome, like for us, and probably because of three things. So the most important things I think for us is, of course, weekly dinners at Y Combinator. So they invite famous entrepreneurs and other YC founders who have gone from YC in the previous batches, and these founders, they share their experience and their struggles and how they tackle them, and that's like probably one of the most important things. And also like just by being in this network, it's extremely valuable to be in this network, because it's really easy to solve kind of like problems, and if you have any questions, you could just ask really experienced people who could help you with that. So that's extremely valuable for us.
Yeah, it's really amazing to hear about Storyline's growth already, and to see what you're going to do next. I know that my girlfriend, for example, she's not a developer. She uses Squarespace for her website, and maybe one day she'll use Storyline for her skills as well.
Yeah, and she could start doing that right now.
Fantastic. So what's coming up then in 2018, Vasili, for Storyline?
So I think that in general, in terms of Alexa growth and ecosystem growth, we'll see a huge number of devices out there. There was an article that we have 40 million devices, smart speakers sold, or no, 40 million in the US only. And I think that this number will probably double this year, and it will double not because just of their smart speakers themselves, but because of their Alexa connected devices. So there are a number of devices like headphones, or BMW has a partnership with Amazon, so BMW cars will have Alexa integrated, and those kind of like devices. And the best part is that the ecosystem is the same. And when you're building skills for Alexa, it will be available in all these places. So that's really exciting. And I think that new use cases will show up during this year. So for example, when I mentioned BMW, right? And you can just like think about using Alexa when you're like in your car driving, and that's a completely new experience. And we think that we'll see skills designed specifically for that experience, and that would be really amazing. So for us, this year is grow, not just like our user growth, but ecosystem growth. And we invest a lot of resources, a lot of money into growing the ecosystem itself, because that's how we grow the product, by growing the ecosystem and by explaining people, by sharing our stories and secrets about voice space, what we do right now, by explaining people that the voice space is going to be huge, and here is what you should do about that.
Fantastic. Well, what we'll do is we'll put the link to your article that you were mentioning about, from your 5K kind of review readings, and we'll put the links to your Storyline YouTube.
Yeah, and check out Storyline community. It's fantastic. It's like the best community of Alexa skills creators right now.
Fantastic. Where can people find that?
It's on Facebook. It's facebook.com/groups/Storyline community in one word. And we'll add the link for that too.
Fantastic. Wicked. And if people wanted to get involved with Storyline, what's the URL for Storyline?
It's getstoryline.com.
Fantastic. And are you around online for people to ask questions to? I know you're active on the Facebook community. What about Twitter?
I'm active on Facebook, and if you guys just join Storyline community on Facebook, we reply to every comment and every post, so you can just like ask questions there.
Fantastic. Wicked. Thank you very much, Vasili, for joining us. A successful one this time. I think the recording has worked. So thank you very much. And Dustin, thanks as well for joining us as well.
Yeah, thank you too.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me.
That was Vasili Shynkarenka from Storyline. Thank you very much, Vasili, for joining us. So glad that recording worked this time. I don't know what I would have done if it didn't work. Thank you so much, Vasili. That was a massively interesting episode. Thank you, Dustin, for co-hosting. If you are looking to create your first Alexa skill, or you use other platforms and you want something that's a bit easier to use, give Storyline a go. I've tried it myself. It is extremely easy to use, very user-friendly. It's a drag-and-drop interface. Really simple to get up and running with. Give it a try and see where you get. The Alexa Kids Skills Challenge was won, as Vasili said, by somebody who created their skill in Storyline. Vasili must be over the moon with that. And one of the things that he did mention is to increase the discoverability of your skills, to ask people to leave user reviews. So with that, following that vein and train of thought, if you have been listening to this podcast over the past few weeks and you have been enjoying it, if you've got this far to the end of this episode and you're still listening to me rabbit on, then there must have been some kind of value there. If you have enjoyed it, then please do leave it a review in your chosen podcast player. It will be immensely appreciated. You can also use the VUX World Flash Briefing if you want to get snippets of these podcasts and insights and tips and tricks and things like that. We'll be putting highlights of the podcast every single day in the VUX World Flash Briefing. Thank you, Vasili, very much for joining us. Thank you, Dustin, and thank you for listening. And until next time, see you later.